Hey, this is Austin Bullington today to present my end of the year SRA 370 slideshow on the Chicago Black Sox and why it was such a landmark controversial case, and how the MLB early labor markets kind of had somewhat to do with this and why the whole controversy even ensued at all. So, first off, I just wanted to start with a little bit of history. Today, when we see professional sports leagues, we see them as pretty much money pits. I mean, every star player, even average players, make well above what the normal American would make these days. I mean, you see all the TV deals, all the ticket sales, there's just money flowing in left and right. But there was a time when these teams were really trying to get started and they didn't have the backing that they do today. So I looked up the average salary of an MLB player in the 1910s, and I found out that they only made $2,307 a year, which obviously adjusted for inflation would be around $41,526, which is nothing compared to what they make now. Today's average MLB stars actually make $2.2 million. I mean, the $40,000 is pennies compared to what they're making today, and not nearly enough for them to have lived on, fully supporting a family. So, and a lot of these guys, a lot of these big mobsters and gamblers knew how these guys were being paid. So, this wasn't actually the first time that bribery had been attempted. There had been talks of mobsters trying to get pitchers to throw one-off games here and there just so they can make a quick buck. But what makes the Black Sox so famous is this is the largest scale, the successful scale that it had ever been seen on. I mean, these one-off games were nothing compared to a full World Series championship. So, and speaking of the World Series championship, at the time, the Black Sox were one of the best teams in the league. When they were slotted against the Cincinnati Reds for the World Series, they actually had 3-1 odds to win, which, if you do gamble, you know that the payout for that would be massive. That it would have been a great amount of money if the Reds were to upset the Sox, but most people saw it as there's just no way that it could really happen. So that's what brings us to the 1919 World Series, which is what this whole presentation is about. So the main two corroborators in this whole scandal were the White Sox pitcher Chuck Gandil and a famous bookmaker, Joseph Sullivan. So Sullivan actually approached Gandil with the whole idea of, hey, if you throw this, I can give you a crazy amount of money. And as it says, Sullivan actually offered Gandil $100,000 total to be able to pull this off. So, I mean, if any guy's making $2,500 a year and somebody approaches them with an opportunity to take $100,000, I don't think I really know anybody that would have said no at the time, especially when you have a family to feed. So, Gandil knew that he couldn't do this alone. So he obviously had to split the money with some of his teammates. So he rustled up some guys, and he had a whole posse on his team. He added Eddie Coquette, Claude Williams, Charles Risberg, Oscar Felson, Buck Weaver, Fred McMullen, and the famous shoeless Joe Jackson. So he tried to split the money, all these guys, somewhat evenly, but he obviously kept more for himself. So when it came down to game time, game one, it resulted in a 9-1 loss for the Sox, and a lot of that is historically stated to have been caused by Coquette's blunders. So when it came to game two, Lefty Williams apparently walked 3 people and turned the game that they also should have won into a 4-2 loss. So at this time, the heavily favored Sox are down 2-0 in a series that they should have won easily. But what was bad about the gamblers at the time is that they didn't quite have all the money ready to pay them. So the players were expecting 20,000 a game because it was a 10-game series at the time, 20,000 a game or a 9-game series, 20,000 a game to be able to know that the money was coming, but they didn't get it fast enough. So at this time, it's stated that the players got restless and they started to want to turn it around. But sadly, at this point, there wasn't enough time to turn it around because they were already down 2-0. Team morale was low. The team was kind of split up at this point, and they just weren't able to pull it back together, which is really sad. So after the series was lost, there was hush talks and reporters trying to figure out if it was rigged, and then they finally got enough evidence to be able to put a case together against the players that I mentioned earlier. So the first ever league commissioner for the MLB was Judge Landis, and he had the task of acquitting these men with acts of conspiracy against the MLB, which means that they would be banned for life and never able to play in a series again, which really does hurt them because a lot of these guys were doing it for the money. I mean, even Shoeless Joe Jackson in a teary-eyed interview said, I needed to be able to feed my wife and kids. They had a choice, but when the money was present, it was just too good not to take. But that's what brings it into the hard part is who was actually guilty out of these men. It's stated that Buck Weaver was out before the whole thing even began, and he actually never received any money from the issue. He just knew what was going on from the guys. And as I stated, famously, Shoeless Joe Jackson actually had one of his best batting series ever. And if you know baseball, he batted a .375, which is incredible. So many have stated that while he did receive $5,000 of the money, the way that he was playing was not at all to throw these games. He was actively trying to win. So it really brings up the question of one of the big reasons that it's such a controversy is who was actually guilty in all this. And I mean, even there's stated that there was other New York mobsters such as Arnold Rothstein, who was a huge New York mobster who was supposed to back Sullivan, but never actually came through. But he was never charged of anything and supposedly made a fortune on this series. So it really is such a fluid, weird thing because no one can pinpoint exactly who did what and who was guilty of what. So it is sad to see, but as we're getting into, in my opinion, I do think that Judge Landis did make the right call. I mean, at the time, there had never been such a drastic case of this. I mean, you have thousands of fans putting in so much money, so much of their support just to find out that all this isn't real. It would have killed them. It really could have, I believe, killed the MLB if fans would have found out that games were being rigged and nothing was going on. Nobody wants to go watch something that they know what's going to happen. The whole beauty of sports is that anybody can win at any given time. So nobody wants to know that their games are scripted just like another television show. And as an Atlanta Falcons fan, it really made me think of today and how we're even still part of it. And that's why Calvin Ridley is pictured there because of his actions last year in gambling. He got suspended for a year betting on games that he wasn't even a part of. He was injured and he got caught sports betting and he got banned for a year. And that's why on the slide I say if no drastic action, what would occur? Because I fully believe if Judge Landis had not taken the drastic action, it could have ruined Major League Sports as a whole, and this controversy probably would have continued on for years and years. If there was no sort of scare tactic to make these players realize, hey, this is extremely illegal, then nothing would have ever been done. But also, as I stated in the beginning of the slideshow, I don't believe that a lot of this could have came to be about if players wouldn't have started getting paid more. The explosion of pro sports now, a lot of the players don't need the money like they used to. They can comfortably feed their families and know at night that they're financially secure. They don't need the money to do this anymore. And I think that in a big part, that is what helps things like such as this not happen today. So part of it is that the game has grown and the money. So yeah. Thank you for listening to my slideshow. And just wanted to say my reference page is attached, so it's not on here, and I have my in-text citations in the slideshow. Thank you.